Hey everyone, my name is Alexandra and I am a watercolor artist. Today I want to paint some snowy, misty trees with you guys. I had a comment on one of my recent videos from Victoria Jane asking for a snow-covered tree. So today I'll show you guys some misty trees. Let's get started. For supplies today, you guys will need 2 cups of water. I have one for clean water, one for dirty. I'm using 3 different paintbrushes today. I have Opus Allegros numbers 2, 4, and a 1/2 inch flat brush. I am using 140 pound cold press watercolor paper. Make sure that you guys have a napkin for drying your paintbrushes on. And lastly, I'm using Philosophy and Co's Terrain watercolor palette. I'll be using a lot of green and blue in this painting, as well as some brown. So if you guys look to get green, blue, and brown, you should be all set. And the last thing I have, just to give us our nice snowy, misty trees, is a white gel pen. If you guys have either a white pen, white crayon, or some sort of white paint, whether it's gouache or acrylic, that will work perfect. The first thing that we're gonna do for our painting is fully cover our page in water, and I'm gonna start with a wet on wet technique. So I have taped my paper to a board here just because I'm covering it with water, it's more likely to buckle. So this is what I'm using my 1/2 inch flat brush for, just to get nice coverage. But if you guys have a bigger paintbrush also, that will work as well, or you can use a spray bottle. So I'm just trying to make sure that I have a nice even coverage on my paper. And I also want to make sure that it's wet enough so that it's not drying too quickly, just because we're going to be using a lot of a wet on wet technique here. So I'm just using my paintbrush to make sure that the water is fully spread out on my paper. Okay, so now that I can see my page is fully saturated, if I lift up my paper, it's not gonna drip water anywhere. That's often my check to make sure that I don't have too much water on my paper. Now I can go in and start adding the colors. So often with my misty forests, I will go for a mixture of green and blue. For this one, specifically because I'm painting a winter misty forest, I'm gonna give everything sort of a stronger blue undertone, just because I wanna give it that really wintry, cool feel to it. So I'm mixing on my palette sort of a blue-green color right now. And I'm starting with it not too pigmented, it's a little bit more watered down. And I'm actually just gonna go straight into my paper, and I'm gonna mix in this color and just let it bleed into where the water is. So I'll start with color right in the corner here, just because I'm gonna paint some big trees coming up from it. So the idea is that you're adding the water color to your paper, but you're trying to make sure that you leave some white spaces in there. And I'm gonna go in with some darker green as I go and just blend it in. So I'm mixing green and blue for this. And again, I'm not fully painting in the area, I'm just sort of dotting it in and letting the wet paper do what it does and bleed into itself as I go. So now that I've done that, while it's still wet, I'm gonna go and I'm just gonna paint some lines coming down. That'll be our trees. So we're gonna go in after and add some more detail to this. But I've done, just to start, 3 lines down, and then I'm just gonna dot the color really lightly around. So as it dries, it's not gonna dry too dark, which means that I'll be able to go in and add detail after as we go. But the idea is that I'm getting this base layer down, and then when we add on top, everything's gonna be nice and light, and then the detail will make it all stand out more. So as I move back in my painting, I want to go more blue than green, just because often when you're looking in the distance, trees, if you actually take a look at a mountain, the trees that are further back will look usually fully blue and almost have no green in them. So I'm painting another section. My paper's still wet, so I'm just filling it in. And I'm taking blue and I'm just kind of painting a patch of water. So you guys can shape it however you want. But the idea with these patches that we're painting in is that we're leaving a lot of white space so that it looks like the trees are really sitting in the mist. So now I can go up top here and do another one. I'm gonna do it smaller just because these trees won't be as big, and my paper is drying a little bit, so I can go in and add more water just to blend it in. And we'll do one more just up here. So now the idea, like I did with this front section, is that I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna add a little bit more pigmented version of what I just painted in. And I'm just gonna dot it into some sections. So I'm not filling in the whole area that I just painted. I'm just adding a little bit more deep blue. And then doing the exact same thing that I did with this front section of trees. I'm gonna paint little lines up for the trees that are sort of coming off of each section. So I switched to my smaller number 2 paintbrush just because I want to get finer lines because these ones aren't so big. And I'm just painting really skinny lines down. And then on each side of the line, I'm sort of dotting in color. So if you guys want to see a little bit more detail, I do have a tutorial on how to paint a pine tree. And the concept that I'm doing here is exactly the same, except this time I'm doing it on wet paper rather than dry. So if you guys do want to see a bigger version, then feel free to stop this video and go check out that tutorial just because it'll help you know a little more what I'm talking about. But again, as you can see, I'm doing a straight line down and I'm just dotting color on either side of it. And the idea of doing this while it's wet is that it gives it a super nice blend, and then we'll go over and add more detail in a bit. So again, further back, I'm keeping more to the blue color, and as I move forward, I can go more green. So I'm just painting tiny little trees, and right away you can see how they start to stand out a bit more. So I'll add a few lines sort of in the foreground over here. And this is just giving me also a good guide as it dries to know where I want to put my trees. I'm just going to add a few more to this front section here. Okay, and now I'm going to leave my painting for a minute and give it some time to dry. Now that this is dry, we're going to go ahead and add another layer on top. Life hack, if you guys are painting paintings like this and need it to dry quickly, you guys can use a blow dryer to dry your paper faster. Just make sure that you don't have it on a super hot setting. All right, back to the painting. So we are gonna go into our front layer. We'll start with these trees at the front here. And because they're further forward, this one, we're gonna use more of a blue-green. So I'm mixing blue shadow here with some of the green that I had on my page, which I believe is mostly balsa. And I'm just getting a really nice deep foresty green. So for these trees specifically, we are using the white to add in our snow. Depending on what I'm painting, sometimes I will try to make sure that I use the white of the paper to look like the snow. Yeah, but for these ones, we're gonna use either our white pen or our paint after. So I'm actually just gonna paint these like I would my regular pine trees. So what I'm gonna start by doing is painting over top of where I've painted the trees already. I'm gonna do a single line down. And what I'm doing is I'm adding the branches just by adding a little bit of texture on either side of that main tree trunk. So I'm doing it very loose. I'm not painting directly over top of what I already painted underneath. I'm just using that sort of as a shadow to make it stand out more, really give it the look that it is misty. And the idea is that off of that center line, I have my branches sort of sticking out. They're kind of horizontal. Some of them are pointing up a bit, but everything is coming down towards that center. And for this painting, nothing is going to be super detailed because we are working on a smaller painting here as well. But as I come down to this part here, I want it to look like the branches are sort of poking out of the fog and the mist. So where I see this white space, I'm not going to paint a branch there, and I'm just going to jump below and add my next one sort of below that. And I'm adding a ton of little lines just to give the look of the tree. So it's little lines facing down. And again, I'm not going fully through because I want it to look like the fog is kind of going through the tree. So I have a little gap there. I'm going to leave another gap right here because I have some white space. And we're just going to paint that in. So these trees are the biggest just because they're at the front of our painting. So I started with that one, now I'm gonna do the exact same thing for the other two. So again, I'm starting with a line down the center. If you guys want for this too, you're welcome to add some brown paint in as well. And you can use that for that center line. So I'm gonna paint it going all the way down. And it's not too dark. I wanna make sure that when I paint the branches over top, they're not overshadowed by that base tree trunk line. So I can actually just go in and I might as well paint the line for all three of my trees there. And now I'm gonna go in and add the branches, and I'm following the exact same concept. So the easiest way to think of it when you're at the top is painting sort of little V shapes coming down towards the center. And then each branch that comes in, you're following that exact same concept. So it's shapes that are sort of in a V format, but I don't mind if they blend into each other. I'll overlap them with that center trunk of the tree. And again, if you guys want more detail on how to do this, then feel free to check out my pine tree tutorial. It's a good base, especially when you're painting misty trees, because this version of doing it, we're just painting a more loose version of the pine tree that I did, or the pine tree tutorial that I've done. Okay, so now as we head down, I'm gonna continue with the same concept, but I'm gonna space it out a little bit more. So I'm leaving some gaps where I see the white really showing through on my paper. And then I can go bigger towards the bottom here. All right, and then we're gonna do the exact same thing for this next tree. All right, so now that I've painted that, I am going to go back in, and I'm actually gonna go with some water, and I'm just gonna really exaggerate some of these parts here that look like there's clouds in them. And I'm just gonna take my water and just blend it through what I've already painted. So my paintbrush right now has no paint on it. It's just water. And I'm just going over some of these spots and I'm just rubbing it in, moving the paint around just to really exaggerate the fact that it is foggy. So I can even take some of the color and pull it out a little bit more. And then I'm gonna go in behind with a super, super light paint. And my paper's dry at this point, but I'm also just gonna add exactly what I was doing before and add those shapes of the trees sort of in behind so it looks a little bit more layered. So I'm just sneaking them right in between the trees that I've already painted. And just really giving it that more layered look. Okay, so now that we've done that with our front set of trees, that's the hardest, most intimidating ones. So now I'm gonna make my way back and I'm just gonna continue that exact same process going back, but my trees are gonna get smaller and smaller. And the other thing that I'm doing is I'm leaving them to be a little bit more blue toned than green. I had the front ones with a tiny bit more green in them. So for these trees, as I move back, I'm not gonna go as defined because the idea is that you're not gonna see them as clearly the farther away that they are. So the main concept is that I'm painting that center branch down, and I had a bit too much water on there, but I'm gonna paint the branches out. At this point, I'm not doing the super specific shapes. I'm just doing little blobs to kind of imitate the branches of the tree. And then I'm just gonna blend it into the rest of that misty section, and I'm using a little bit of a dry brush technique for that. And using the dry brush technique just gives it the illusion that the trees are sort of poking through the fog. So again, as I move further back, my trees are becoming less and less defined. Which I think is one of my favorite things about looking at misty trees. You know, you kind of get sneak peeks of what's behind the mist, but you can't totally see it. So the fun thing about this is you're using a lot of the same technique where I'm using the exact same color that I used when I was painting underneath. And I'm just painting another layer on top. And as you layer, you use a glazing technique, maybe without even realizing that you were. But the trees that are in front will stand out more than the ones that were behind. So you could see too, with some of the trees that I'm painting, I'm taking the base of the tree and I'm just adding color and sort of pulling it along so that it really looks like it's standing out in the fog. So just another quick summary of what I'm doing here is continuing to add these little tree shapes, super abstract, and like with this one, I'm painting the tree and then I'm just sort of pulling the color along, continuing to use that dry brush technique, and I'm just sticking more trees in. So I'm scattering trees pretty randomly. There's no right or wrong way to do this, but the main thing that you want to focus on is the fact that you're being careful to leave white space to just be the fog that's in there, and then we're gonna add the snow after. But yeah, just main idea, leave the white space and soften your painting as you move back and the trees get smaller, just so that you can tell that those are the trees that are more in the background. So now that I have these all painted with more detail, I really want it to look like it is going from trees that are further forward to further back. So I had green in this first section here. I didn't have a ton in that second layer. So I'm gonna go in and add some paint just with a little bit more green because I want them to stand out more. And I might even make some a little bit bigger. Again, just to really show that they are sitting in front. So right away you can see the difference. So now I'm gonna add a tiny bit of green into this second section that's a bit further back, but I'm not gonna do as much. And here I'm using a glazing technique again, where I'm not actually painting anything specific. I'm just sort of dotting it in to my painting that's already there, focusing on adding it on top of the dark colors and being careful to really leave the light white parts that I have in there how they are. All right, so right away you can see a difference there. So now we are going to go in with our white pen and we're gonna add some snow. So I'm just using a plain gel white pen that I have here. You guys do not need anything fancy. If you're using white paint, you can use a super fine paintbrush for this part. But what we're going to do is just add dots to our painting to look like snow. So I'm just starting with literally just dotting my pen over where I've painted the trees. And the idea is that it looks like snow is falling, and then we're gonna go back in and add some more to look like the trees are a little bit more snow covered. And just have fun with this. I'm not even paying attention. I'm just drawing dots wherever, spreading them out really randomly. And now we'll add them on top of this front section. So right away, it gives it a wintry look immediately because you can tell that there's snow on top. I might cluster some of them closer together. I don't want them all really evenly spread. I want them kind of mixed up in here. Okay, so now that I have dots on my page, I want to add what looks like snow on the trees. So what I'm going to do with my white pen is I'm going to just color little bunches of white on top of the branches that I've already painted. So I'm essentially just scribbling lines, but the idea is that it looks like there is some snow on the trees. Yes, if you guys use white pen, white paint, and you're just putting in these little bunches. So it already looks wintry, just solely based on the colors that we've chosen and the fact that we've painted or drawn the little snowflakes in. But adding this white into it is just gonna take it to another level. And it's also gonna make the rest of the color that you have in behind stand out more. So now I'm gonna do this with the rest of my trees. And again, I'm not actually painting specific shapes. The idea is that I'm just painting, or not painting, drawing. I'm not drawing specific shapes. I'm just scribbling little patches that are on top of where my branches are. So just adding the white in. I'm not doing as much as we come towards the top because it's already a lot more faded. But just scribbling bits of white in. And now, right now I have a lot of white space left in my painting, which I don't really want. So I'm actually gonna go back in with my paintbrush and I'm gonna wet my page again. And we're just gonna add some more color into it, continuing with that wet on wet technique. So I'm sort of painting into those white gaps. And at the top here, I could add an even darker blue if I want, so that it kind of looks like sky up there. And I'm just gonna mix it in. So nothing, don't need to be too particular or precise about this. The idea is to just fill in that white space by adding the blue to look like sky. It does contrast with the color of the trees as well. So now with my clean paintbrush, I'm just gonna mix this in and bring it closer to the trees. And now into these white spaces, we're just gonna add some more of that green blue that we were already using And the idea is just to fill in the gaps some more. So now we're gonna let that dry, and then everywhere that I've added paint and watercolor, I'm gonna go in and I'll add some more white to look like snow. So by doing this, because I have more color on my page, I'm still, as you guys can see, being super careful to make sure that I'm leaving white throughout my paper. That allows me to add more snowflakes in that will stand out against the colors that are in behind. So we're gonna let that dry and then we'll add them in. Okay, so now that my painting is dry, I'm gonna go back in and just add some more snowflakes coming down. All right, so we're just gonna, again, dot them into wherever I haven't put them already. One of the things that I like about adding that sort of deeper blue sky at the top is the fact that it does make the snow stand out so much more. And something about the deep blue sky just gives it more of a wintry feel. So again, I'm just adding dots wherever. And this is one of those paintings that if I wanted to, I could keep going and I could add more color just to give the trees some more depth and just keep building on what I've already done. But I do like to make sure that I keep the layers looking lighter as I work my way back. Right, and that is all we have for our snowy, misty trees. I hope that you guys enjoyed this tutorial. If you followed along, make sure to take a picture of it, send it to me on Instagram at Alexandra Victoria Studio, or tag me on Instagram. I love to see what you guys are working on, especially if you are following along with my paintings, so please do share. Also, if there's anything super specific that you want to learn next, whether it's a painting that you want to do or a technique that you're just not confident in, leave a comment below, let me know. I would love to teach you guys. And if you haven't already, make sure to like this video and subscribe to this channel. We'll see you next time.